we are going to grab the next one right now.
We do gotta come back to that.
If Steve, you want to grab those beers out of the fridge?
Yeah.
This one coming up, and I typed it very fast, so I actually misspelled it, is North High IPA. It is an American IPA with aggressive bitterness, floral and citrusy hop aromas, balanced with a biscuity maltiness. Now here's the cool part about this. Ready to get this? Somebody asked me about this particular beer just today. Literally just today.
We got it just today.
Now, here's the funny thing. I have not seen this beer in any store in Cleveland yet.
I have not either.
And yet,
sir.
and yet, Kelvin and I went out to go grab the second brew, and it was right there in the store, right after somebody had
you
asked
got one?
about it.
With George. Oh, okay.
So this should be fun.
Das is good.
Now, this is out of Columbus, for those who are interested, and they have quite a good following. I've had several people from Columbus say that this is their favorite brewery. It is an IPA, so it should be plenty flavorful. Less head on this one. I'll say that I was able to pour the entire beer without trying to overflow. A little darker. It has an amber color. Ooh.
That looks nice.
Dude, that smells really good. It almost has
Smells more hoppy for sure.
yeah, there's almost a hoppy citrusness to it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Especially that last one was so light.
Ooh, I
Wow.
like that. Ooh,
Wow, very floral.
that's
Wow.
good. It has a very floral aftertaste, and up the front, it's like hoppy up front and a little floral on the back, right?
Yeah, I have to say for probably the, I guess, least hops embracing person of the group, it's good. Like you
Yeah.
get the hoppy flavor, but you're not
it's
competing.
nice.
Like it has a lot of it's pretty sweet.
I agree. I could actually drink this one frequently. This is good. This is very good.
It's a little summer shandy.
Yeah.
I think.
Ish, yeah. It's hold on. I just saw it. There we go. It is a 6.8 on the ABV. I have to say this is really good. Once again, it says North High Brewing Company, Columbus, Ohio. So
Fish.
I mean, it has like a honey taste. I'm curious.
good with
I'd like to
fish.
know.
it does, right?
Everything goes good with fish.
Next podcast, we'll have some.
I'm gonna go with wings on this one. I would like it with some wings.
We can do that too. We can do that too.
Mike is always wings, Gumpy's always fish.
I did go pizza last time. In fairness, I'm
That's
gonna-
true. That's true. Once again, this would be really good with a
He can't
margarita
have wings.
pizza.
That's why I bought the fish.
That's true. Yeah.
Actually,
like
that would
the color
This would go really well with
more
veal.
than I think I like the taste.
I
like
really
the
do.
taste, but I like the color more.
Okay. It does have a very nice, robust, like amber color.
What's the alcohol content on that one, Juicer?
6.8.
Oh, see, that's good. You know what I like about that is I feel like it's a smooth 6.8. Usually when you get higher alcohol content in IPAs, it gets real thick and dense and heavy.
Yeah.
And that one kind of was smooth. I like that. That wasn't bad.
Taking a break on this one, George?
All right.
I had one.
Oh, okay.
Back to slavery.
Already.
Slavery.
So,
Well, you gotta have more questions than that. You're letting all the skeptics down.
oh no, there's
Right.
more. There's more.
Right,
There's
right,
more.
right.
Trust me, there's more.
No, I mean on the
But-
slavery topic.
Well, to George's earlier comment on the rules of slavery, since we're looking at this from the Judeo Christian point of view, there are different rules, and I think a lot of these rules were the slaves were treated with fairness. They were allowed to get property. All of this. Was that the same just for the Jewish slaves versus the slaves that came from the Gentile nations?
Well, I mean, at this point in First Peter, we're talking about the Greco-Roman society. That's actually who he is writing to. And if you look at this society, some of it's actually really cool. If you had a good owner, let's take the book of Luke and Acts, for example. Both written by Luke, right? St. Luke. St. Luke wrote both the Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles. All right? He was a full-fledged physician because he was a slave. So, yeah, his master paid for his full education. So he became a physician because his master paid for his education.
Where is that documented that he was a slave? I never heard that.
It's all throughout church tradition. I'll try to find the documents. But yeah, it's really cool. And he went on, and he was told to go ahead and accompany the apostles like Paul, and create the documents for him. He was more or less he became his amanuensis during his early part of his career or ministry.
But there's a vast difference in what a slave was defined in the Greco-Roman world to where it evolved to in the 1800s.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me be more specific with my question.
Okay.
A Jewish slave owner, did he have different standards for a Jewish slave versus the Gentile slave?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did. There was a specific way you were supposed to treat other Jewish people as opposed to those you brought in. And I did not write those down, so we can hit that at a different time.
Yeah.
But yes, there was a difference. You were still supposed to be very fair with him. Actually, the non-Jewish brother slave you brought in kind of aligns with the laws of Hammurabi. If you go back to the ancient Akkadian, Sumerian laws, a lot of those laws align with those laws. Jewish laws, believe it or not, are predominantly the laws of the land. They really are not. Christians have a wrong idea of the laws. When you go back to like the Leviticus and the Levitical laws and the priesthood, and a lot of those laws line right up with the laws of Hammurabi, the Akkadians, the Sumerians, the Canaanites. A lot of it's the same laws. So really, if you look at it, you have to remember to parse that. The places where it differs are things like the dietary laws, the ceremonial laws, stuff like that. Outside of that, a lot of them align pretty doggone well with other ancient laws.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
And then I think it's going back to that. Was it? Did you have Peter up before?
Oh, yep. There you go.
Peter 2:18.
Yep.
Is that it right there? I'm reading something different. I
This
feel
is-
like it says something about slaves be subject to your masters with all reverence, not only to those who are good and equitable, but also those who are perverse.
Well, okay,
So what are we talking about?
the-
Sounds pretty slave-like to me.
the proper terminology.
Oh, they treated their slaves with respect. They could just rape the women. Totally cool.
No, it's not that severe. It's not that severe.
What? I don't know. It says perverse.
No, it's not. Okay, let's say that you go to work tomorrow, all right? And your boss is pissed off with you, and he says that, you're a complete jerk, go home, I hate your face,
Right.
all right? To be a good Christian, you are supposed to turn around and tell him, that's fine, God bless you, I'll see you tomorrow, all right? That is what that is in reference to.
All right, but that could also. I have a feeling, right? What you gave was a very watered down, simple radio edit version of what that could be, right?
That really isn't. That's what it's in reference to. Because remember, these were contract employees.
I don't think they're being submissive to someone calling them a jerk. I don't think that's what they're talking about there. You believe that? You think that's it?
Once again, you're equating Greco-Roman slavery to American
I know.
slavery.
I don't know
They're
if I'm buying
two
it.
different
I'm not
things.
sure if I'm buying
Yeah,
your
For
but you're
example-
also
for
talking
example-
about a difference in language.
Well, for example,
Right?
okay.
I can understand things get lost in translation.
For example, have you read the book of Philippians yet?
No. I'm
Okay.
not.
Go back and read the book of Philippians. It's actually all about a slave who just did not he was in disagreement with his master, okay? And he ran to Paul. And Paul becomes the intermediary between him and his master because he doesn't want to go back to him. And his master doesn't want anything to do with him now because he's not listening. There was not any drastic repercussions for that. Okay.
Not-
So, but Paul becomes the slave's intermediary so that he can go back to earning his wages with his master again, and because he's the peacemaker, which is what the gospel tells us to be, as peacemakers. And that's what he does. The book of Philippians is about making things peaceful between that slave and his master.
Well, I mean that's a fun story about a slave, but like, what
It's a
about the ones
document.
that don't have a, the ones that are getting raped and beaten are the ones I'm interested about.
That's American
When
slavery.
a man sells his daughter as a slave, she will not be freed at the end of 6 years as the men are if she does not please the man who bought her. Rape.
That's Leviticus.
Rape.
That's Leviticus. That's
Exodus.
that's Leviticus. That's
Well,
Exodus. Okay, that's still the
Rape!
Old Testament.
Rape.
That's still the Old Testament.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's my. I guess I do have issue
Sounds
with
very
that.
Harvey Weinstein-esque.
It's
Yes.
different from the New Testament because
Yeah.
you know what, if it's contractual, and you know what you're signing up for, then you can't. I at least from my perspective, it's like, don't cry foul. If you know that ahead of time.
Well, does this daughter get to
So,
determine?
but what I'm saying is, I agree with you.
Oh,
In
okay.
the Old Testament, I feel like there is a difference.
There is a difference.
The girls who were taken,
Yeah.
the virgin girls, were not given a choice.
No, and I understand that. Now here's the difference, though.
I don't know. Still sounds pretty
Before
slave-esque.
we
Like, I
go
know
further,
it.
before we go further, you have to remember that Leviticus is based on the laws of the land. Exodus is based on the laws of the land.
It's the spoils of war.
Okay? It's based on the laws of Hammurabi. It's based on the Canaanite laws. It's based on Akkadian laws, Sumerian laws. That's what those books are based on. They're not based on quote unquote God. They're actually based on the laws of the Mesopotamian lands.
So who's
That's what
telling
everybody
Leviticus,
forgets.
Who's telling Leviticus this story, and then why did it get to the Bible then? Like,
Because that was, once again, if you go back there, all God is saying is obey the laws of the land. And he literally is going through the laws of the land and saying, go ahead and obey them because those are their laws.
and so God wasn't like, hey, let's not rape these daughters. And I thought God, right? I thought we
Now,
were
wait a
talking.
minute.
I thought we were just talking how like God's the one that determines what's right and wrong. But now we're talking about how this whole chapter is what the law of the land was. I'm confused now.
Now,
I thought God was the one that determined that. So why
Not-
are we letting the laws
during
of the land
that
get in there?
time, they had already cast out God as the leader. That's what you forget. Go back to Deuteronomy 32. It was the sons of God, okay, the fallen angels who had been put over charge of the nations. So you're not talking about God telling everybody what to do that's right. You're not.
Then how's it getting in the Bible
they had
about treating your
rejected him.
slaves and raping women? Why
There was-
wouldn't God like
there
give
was-
a moral hierarchy? Be like, hey guys, I know I gave you, but you know what? I'm gonna trump you on this one, just like I did with murder. All right, we're not gonna rape girls anymore.
There was one
Slave or
people.
not.
There was one people that decided to follow Yahweh. Only one, and that was the Hebrews, and they decided to follow Yahweh. The rest of the nations had not. However, the laws were predominantly copacetic, and that was a very brutal time. But if you look at the laws, the Jewish laws were actually better, or I should say the Hebrew laws, technically, were better than the ones like, Hammurabi and the Akkadian laws, Sumerian laws, Canaanite. The ones that came out of the Hebrews actually were more humane and better than the ones that came out. And if you look at the people and follow their stories, they are not going through and raping people. They do take wives, all right? But those wives go on, some of them go on to become great leaders within their communities.
Great leader or not, she'd still be taken in as a slave and still being raped. I don't think
You're still looking at ancient law. These are barbarian times. You're not talking about you're a modern American
Okay.
who can go around the corner and pick up cheese from convenient. All right.
Get a job at CVS,
Or corn twisters.
Okay. All right. But to your point, I hear what you're saying. For me, the issue lies with how in the world did the Old Testament and the New Testament come together? Because to me, they seem so night and a day.
right.
You know what I mean? And this is a question I've always had in the big picture of things. It seems like God, Yahweh, whatever we want to call the Creator, Jehovah, there's a lot of names, had a lot of learning to do. It's what it feels like to me. Like, man, this really didn't work out in the Old Testament. Let's try it this way with peace. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like to me. So I can understand that.
Yeah.
And however, but to say that a lot of those things are ancient, this is where the problem is that if this is the word of God, and people follow this, and they follow the Old Testament to this day, the Torah, do people still today follow some of those precepts? Let me answer that. Yes. There are rabbis today in Israel who promote that it is okay for the IDF, their army in Israel, to, if you need to, in time of war, to take a Gentile woman. Some of them do. So I can pull up articles from Jewish sources.
Yeah.
From certain rabbis. Not every rabbi. Does everyone do it? Does everyone agree with it? No. But do some preach it and some believe it? Yes.
But to reiterate, Mr. Brian Godawa, when we had him on, and showing, his perspective, that would be a bastardized version.
Absolutely. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is the fact that it's there. People are going to take it and they're going to abuse it and misquote it and use it as authoritative. So,
I would
George
disagree.
is saying, like, why is it even there to begin with?
Yes.
If it wasn't there, people wouldn't be trying to abuse it today, maybe.
Well, it's because culture, right, and context, right? That's why you have idiots walking around who believe in flat Earth, because they're like, oh, look, it talks about a flat Earth in the Bible. Dude, you're an idiot. They're talking to a very ancient people who didn't know there was a round Earth, right? It's because people take things literally, and they don't recognize the historical context of looking at an ancient people and what they actually believed back then, 5,000 plus years ago. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and also, I mean, these were human writers who had to understand what they were writing. And it's actually not so abnormal in today's time. If you look at that section of the world where this was written in, where the age of 13, you are eligible for marriage of a 50, 60-year-old, whatever qualifies as a good, wholesome provider. So that's rape in America,
Yeah.
but you're looking at it through these American eyes. So it's normal back then. So it wasn't anything offensive, and I imagine the women maybe didn't know it. Like, I can't put myself there. I would love to say, yeah, I agree or I disagree. It's just more of like, I can't even fathom the culture because I was raised so drastically different. But I do know it still goes on. In Iraq, people are saying, hey, I'm poor, trading my daughters for your cows.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but I can't say it's wrong or right. Maybe the daughters are like, I'm feeding my family and I'm provided.
No, it's wrong.
Yeah, it's easy for us to say.
It is. It's very easy. Well, for example, let's go on the other side of it. Let's go the ultra-conservative side. George,
Yeah.
if you were raised over in Laos and there's a woman that you want to marry, you have to live in the in-laws' house for a full year
Okay.
and prove to them that you two can get along. No relations, no touching, nothing. You will have to live there for an entire year before you are allowed anything. And then you can proceed with courtship.
Okay.
So once again, a big cultural change.
Right. I
Because,
mean, I get it. I mean, I can at least see some merit in that. Not that I would do it, but I get the idea. But training young women or trading young women to men who could rape them and then they don't get freed in 6 years unless they please them. Juice. That's again.
Put it back in context.
Okay.
It shouldn't even be in there. It should be no slaves. God should have just been like, no slaves. All right, guys. Enough with the slaves, right? I'm telling you murder's bad. I'm telling you this is bad.
But
I'm telling you this is bad. I'm telling you
You're-
not to...
But actually,
You're
in
forgetting the
modern-
Hebrews were slaves.
In our modern time, we're slaves. As
Ooh,
workers.
We're going to go there.
Oh, Stephen.
I don't.
But we're free in God.
Well, we're free in God. Exactly. But But you know what? It's the same. It's similar to what the Old Testament concept of what a slave is. You know, we have a job, we get paid. You know, we you know.
I think what I'm falling back on though is
Okay,
that
would be
these
the
women
land
are
of the
allowed to
free.
be raped. So why do we?
I
Right
hear
during
you.
Exodus, they're talking about
Once
women
again-
being raped. So why are we talking about like, oh, they were just workers? They called their workers slaves back then. I'm not buying it. If the
No,
woman
no,
could
no.
get raped,
I understand what you're
I
saying.
understand.
Probably the culture back then was that if you're a woman and put in that position, you just submitted.
no.
Seriously, if God would have just flooded that whole area
Yes.
and killed everybody, then it would have been fine.
Or burnt it down, Sodom and Gomorrah. We would have been all right.
We're getting to that. So
I hear you. I you know, in the whole context thing, it's a struggle. It still
It
is
is.
a struggle because I can't wrap my mind around it.
But
you know what I mean?
But we're still looking through modern eyes, though.
exactly.
Even because of context. Well, you know what? We'll be judged for our context here in the future. You know, with free porn for everyone, slave trafficking. Look at Hollywood and all the women being, whatever we want to call that, and going on. in
Manipulated.
Yeah. So we're going to be judged for ours in context, right? So I think we have the same right to judge back in context. And when we look back, the girls who were taken that were virgins, we know they didn't have a choice. Okay. The other women were
I thought
outright
they were
ki-
treated nicely though. I
The
thought
other
they were
women
just
were
regular
killed.
workers.
No, they
Potentially.
They were killed. Save, you know.
It's never recorded. It's never recorded.
Okay. Well, I guess it's if we imply from what it's saying there, they were killed. You know, they.
Yeah. And even then, if you go,
It's just tough.
if you go
It
back,
has to be okay to say that.
Esther's a
I
great
agree, I
example of
agree.
that. Esther's
But-
a biblical
That's true.
book with that.
Yeah.
Where she was taken slave into the king. And if she had to
Pagan king,
a pagan king,
pagan
a
kingdom.
pagan kingdom, and if she and some of the things that she did, she could have had her head cut off.
Yeah. And that was under a completely different leadership and everything, because that was under it really was Xerxes is who it was, and she comes under Xerxes and ends up becoming his loyal wife, and he ends up taking mercy on her, and she ends up saving all of the Hebrew people because of her submission to a pagan king.
I know what George is going to say, though.
There was a lot to digest there.
Oh,
Like
by the way,
submission
God,
to a
God,
pagan king.
God, God
That's all
did not
women are
tell
good for.
her. God did not tell her to do that.
That's all they're good for. Is
That's what I
submitting.
say.
But, you know,
Wait.
wives.
Let's just put it this way. She ruled that kingdom the same way that our wives rule us and ours. So
Right.
She
Point
was-
well taken.
She was not the only. She was not the only, right?
she she was the queen. That doesn't include the concubine harems, but she was he only chose one queen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of that, it's not like I read Leviticus and say, okay, write down the rules of the time and apply them. That's not what that's about. I think there's historical facts and artifacts put in there so you can trace the historical relevance of the Bible too. You know, so it's a log as well as, you know, learn your lessons. But when I read through Leviticus, it's not like I'm taking note on how to change my life at all.
Oh no,
This is boring.
Yeah.
you'll fall asleep.
Well, no,
Although if you read Heiser, if you listen to Heiser's podcast, it's far more interesting than I thought it
it's
was.
better. I like that because at least it gives me insight into past
The-
culture, even though it's upsetting culture. But
Yeah.
you keep me out of numbers.
The historical significance I didn't realize was that deep until listening to his podcast. Is that he literally would sometimes break down half of a chapter for a whole podcast because you don't realize the historical cultural implications behind each thing he's going through. It's fascinating. So, taking us to Ephesians 5:22. And submit to each other. By the way, George, I am going to read this whole thing in context since you only threw one verse at me. And submit each other out of respect for Christ. For example, wives should submit to their husbands as if to the Lord. Now hold on. Let's get to the rest of this. A husband is the head of his
Female
Oh,
wife,
listeners
like
also
Christ is
up.
head of the church. That is the Savior of the body. So wives submit to their husbands in everything, like the church submits to Christ. Now, let's get to the groovy part. As for husbands, love your wives just like Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. He did this to make her holy by washing her in a basin of water with the word. He did this to present himself with a splendid church, one without any sort of stain or wrinkle on her clothes, but rather one that is holy and blameless. That's how husbands ought to love their wives, in the same way as they do their own bodies. Anyone who loves his wife loves himself. No one ever hates his own body, but feeds it and takes care of it, just like Christ for the church, because we are part of his body. This is why a man will leave his father and mother and be united, now get this, be united with his wife, and the two of them will be one body. One body united in Christ. It is a unity.
But the woman part is submitting to the man.
But so is the man. The man is supposed to equally submit himself to the woman.
Then
yes.
They should have just deleted that. They should have just again. It should have been chopped out. It should have been left on the editing room floor. They should have just left it out. Then don't even say that part.
No,
Juice.
that's applicable, man. I've been married for 22 years.
Thank
It's
you.
applicable.
Thank you.
What's that?
Because it's all about our. I know this is stereotypical, but a man has a tendency to be selfish, and a woman has a tendency to be controlling.
That's true. I can't
Yeah.
help
Yep.
it.
And
That's
I
true,
can't-
exactly.
And so knowing that this was a problem thousands of years ago, I feel much better about my marriage. And I actually want to take this article, frame it, and say, look, Johnny, I'm going to treat you.
Yeah, you let me know how that
treat
goes,
myself. You know, and I'll delete the other part, like you mentioned. I'll take your advice on that. Because I do think, I think it's beautiful when you read it like that, how we both have to look internally at ourselves
Yeah.
and say, look, this can't, I can't make her what she needs to be for me. I need to make me what I need to be for her. You know what I
Right.
mean? And she, if she's anything like women and guys I talk to, she probably does need to submit because, or else she's going to want to take control of everything.
No, you know what?
And then we need to take our part and submit ourselves in that relationship to them.
No, you don't have to submit though.
Well,
Yes,
That's
you
what it is. Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
A marriage.
No one talks about it.
Wait, hold on. A marriage is not 50-50. A marriage is
is a
100,
100.
100. Yes, you have to submit to each other.
But it doesn't talk about the man submitting.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
does.
does.
It talks. No, it's like, well, okay. Well, the woman's supposed to submit to the
No,
man,
it
and then
says-
man's just supposed to be kind of
Wait,
nice.
Verse
and
Keep
powerful.
reading.
28. That's
looking
how
at it.
husbands ought to love their wives in the same way as they do their own bodies.
Submit yourself to it.
It's a
just
garbage
never seen
line.
this
It's talking
side,
about women
George.
being number two. Is what that's talking about.
It really isn't.
It's talking about
It
women
really
being number
isn't.
two. It doesn't. What it does, it's like, okay, women submit to your husbands, but hey, men be nice. Don't beat them.
That is
what that's
actually
saying.
not what that says at all.
That's exactly what it's saying.
No, it says that
It was mutual. That's the way I take
exactly.
it. It was
Thank
mutual.
you. Yes, it is.
And in addition
Yes,
to that,
it is.
when you mutually submit,
Let me-
both parties drop their pride.
Thank
So
you.
let me ask you something. You're
Yeah.
married, right?
Yeah,
How long you been married?
3 years.
Okay, I've been married 38 years.
Okay.
Okay, so
Uh-oh.
I'm around. I've been around the block a couple times.
He has seniority.
So one of the things that you find out really quickly, when you treat your wife well,
Right.
with
I like
respect,
That. I like that.
and that's what it's saying there,
Like your own body.
like your own body. That's what it's saying to you there,
I like that.
saying that I uphold her and I treat her better than, if not equal to how I treat myself. And when I do that, she will submit to me.
Oh,
And and that word submit, by the way, doesn't mean that I'm lording over her and that I'm like, I got a whip and just waiting for her to step out of line. What it means is that she will respect me enough and she will honor me and as I honor her.
And that's
That's
what it
what
is.
that word means.
Listen,
it's
I like the second paragraph. Going back to what I said, I think that part about women submitting should just be deleted. It should be
the
gone.
biggest problem. The
It should be
biggest
gone.
problem with this verse is it's written in English,
It's true.
which is really screwed up because
It
it wasn't. This was not written in the times of English.
Right.
It was written under a different culture
written
and
in
a
Koine
different
Greek.
language that meant a whole lot different. English bastardizes this.
Ah,
And that's what it does.
And Juice has explained that to me before as well. Now I have a question though, because I could be wrong.
May I say something,
yes, sir.
George?
Go ahead.
Please.
Add to this.
Go.
I was married 23 years my first time. Been married 5 years this time.
All right.
My first marriage, my wife and I were high school sweethearts, but we came from different foundations. I came from a very structured and kind of rigid foundation from a religious perspective, and even my home life, just how things supposed to be in a certain way. On the other hand, her home front and structure was totally different from mine. So to submit to her from the way I seen my father treat my mother, there was no problem with that on my end. From her perspective, it was totally oblivious. She had no concept. My view, if I explain it, lay it out, and give an example, not that I felt I was being biased or my view was the best or I was the winner. I just felt it would be something you weigh out, and if mine has merit, then it'd be an easy decision. But for somebody that lacks the foundation or understanding of, I know the word we're wrestling with is submit, but for somebody who lacks that in understanding, it continually made friction throughout. I didn't consider myself lowering my standards to her. I just humbling myself to her, and I wanted her to do the same to me, and it makes for a better relationship. I don't know if that's any understanding or not,
No,
but
I like it, and I'm going. Again, I like that second part, but it's that woman submit to the man part, and I feel like, and then I have to ask again. I wish I would have
But it's
not
mutual,
been so
though.
hungover today, and I
It's
would have
mutual.
researched some of my stuff. When I came up with these questions, I was a little more studied up, and not so much today. Isn't there another piece about how men are like the spiritual leaders of the household?
it talks about that.
It's right there.
Yes.
Yeah, it
it's
talks
right there.
about that.
Why can't the woman be the spiritual leader of the household?
Actually,
Watch.
I think
Read
they will
that
if they
last.
have
Read the last two
actually, to be
paragraphs.
really-
But if you're as one,
Exactly.
both
Yes.
parties,
Yes.
Then why doesn't why no it, why is it talking about women submitting,
Uh-huh.
and then it talks about men taking care of them like themselves?
Once again,
It's not the same.
you have to remember, right here, he's using two different things. He's speaking of a relationship, and then he uses the relationship as an archetype describing a spiritual church. He's doing both. So if you read throughout there, it says a husband is the head of the household, like Christ is the head of the church. This is save the body. So right there, he's equating those relationships together, but then he goes back into the physical relationships and talks about how they are united in body as one. Because remember, a man, now here's, and if you go back to,
But they weren't united as one when the woman had to submit. That's just for the woman.
no, they are, because
They
in the
are.
second half it talks about how the man has to treat her as his equal, as his own body. That's treating your wife as your equal because she is your body.
All right, but the man doesn't have to submit. Just a woman.
Well, yes, you are
Yes, he
because
does.
she's your own body.
But you might not call it submit intentionally. So there might be some intentionality here of not using the word submit. Honestly, I believe I'll speak for my own marriage. I'm sort of submissive. So Jenny is more anti-submissive. She'll take charge. So she will be the spiritual leader, the disciplinarian, the scheduler, unless I step up. I don't have a problem submitting. Yeah. Actually, guys are lazy. They probably would rather submit. I think sometimes that's
Go ahead,
point.
amen.
You know,
Amen.
But actually, if you
So-
go by the biblical, if you go through the biblical mandate, it is the man's responsibility to raise the children and teaching them.
Well, as the father figure,
As the father,
because
figures.
you have co-relationship, and the reason why is because
I agree.
you have to treat from the father's perspective, and the mother must treat from the mother's perspective. So
I'm gonna throw you a lifeline here, George.
Thank you. You're my boy.
During this time, do we live in a patriarchal society?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
I don't know.
Did Paul draw from his own experience of being married?
to be honest, do we know that Paul was married?
Paul wasn't married.
Then we exactly.
Yeah. So
Peter was married.
I for me personally, there are some things that he says about women that I'm like, yeah, I take it with a grain of salt, man. It doesn't seem like you could score a girl. I gotta be honest.
Wow. But he was taught by Gamaliel.
Wait, let me hear.
Gamaliel.
Oh, yeah,
That's
Wait,
my name. Yeah.
is it coming?
So,
Is
so
it
you
coming?
gotta
Is the
take my
thunder
advice.
Well, he did say not everybody's meant for marriage. I think that's a
True.
wise.
I think he was projecting.
That he
Himself.
wasn't meant. Yeah, but I
Oh.
also think like we do as Americans, and I know it's huge in Italian culture as well. It's like you're immediately like, why aren't you getting married? You start to freak out if your daughter's not married.
true.
And you start setting them up with the block. You
In
know?
the
and-
Spanish culture that I grew up with, it's very patriarchal. You know, they always, oh, shit, look at the Bible here. Shave your head, woman.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that
yeah.
kind of attitude,
yeah.
not literal.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it not so much in the cultures I come from.
But to balance that out, George, my wife, she's a very strong person. She has her master's from Case. She's a high executive in the bank. All of these things. But today she wore an apron all day and cooked all day. Did the laundry all day. Is that her submitting? I don't know what we call it. For me, it's balance between man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Balance. Yeah, I think that's it. And
Yeah.
that's my only point is that like you don't have to use the term submit to me because it would be a natural instinct.
You know,
you would have to use the word submit.
exactly. Yeah, Islam, submit literally means submission, right? Islam.
It does. Yes, it does.
Give your life
literally.
to.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps.
But at the same token, you weren't like sitting in the living room watching the game.
Oh, you know,
And
I
then
was
screaming
watching the
for-
Cavs game today.
Well, and screaming for, hey, get the beer in here, you know.
Right.
You know.
It-
But
Beat
also,
up Kyrie today.
I do wonder, George, and I don't know your background,
He killed it.
but you know, sometimes I think we're so offended by our ancestors and how we. So I don't agree with the feminist movement, but I understand why it happened, and I'm ticked at our ancestors for not dying for their wives and lifting them up and putting them on a pedestal because it made them have to become and rise above this conflict. Same thing for my ancestors in the black community. You know, it's like it pisses me off because now I can't really. I've been argued that I don't even have a right to speak on the subject because of my ancestors. You know what I mean? So this word submission, maybe we're overprotective of it because there has been wrong done in the past. You know, so is your background? You know, have you been exposed to that? Like, are you curious why you're so sensitive, or are you just like so modern? You know that is just like women's Reich sort of thing. You know.
Yeah, I would say probably
Wait,
more.
did
like
you say
that.
Reich like REIC?
Yeah. Because I do think there's a movement that is very Hitler-esque. I mean, there's like we don't need men, you know, and men are inferior, and men are all disgusting, especially middle-aged white men. You know, we are the enemy in today's society, and it gets irritating.
Yeah.
You know that we can't use words like submission without saying there's more to it than just a word. I mean, I'm limited by my vernacular. I can't.
Yeah.
There's more to it. I can explain
I mean,
everything, but
I'll admit, I take more of the in my household. I'm definitely more of the. I take over my house more or less, but at the same time, if I come home and I say,
You just
hey.
saying that because you're sitting with the boys here or what?
No. But let me finish.
I wear the pants in my house after I do the laundry.
Let me finish. Yeah, right. Let me finish. So I tend to do that. Like I even go so far as I'm usually the one who pays. Like I pay all the online bills and stuff like that, and my wife pays the mortgage, stuff like that. You know, so I do take the initiative in a lot of things in my household. But if my wife, if I come home and say, "Well, are we doing this weekend?" and she says, "Well, no, we have these things planned," more than likely I'm going to fall in line with that because I know she's already set things in motion and she's already planned things out. And I know that she put a lot of forethought into it. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do that.
So you
Just,
submit.
right. So, but that's because I look at her as being part of me, and I know if she's put that much forethought into it, I'm going to back her in that, So that's that part of me of realizing that you are the same body, and so I'm going to treat her the way I'm going to treat myself. So.
Yeah, I don't like the word submission either. I personally don't. For me, it implies, oh my gosh, if you submit in a UFC ring, you're weak.
You're right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, you don't submit. You just go till you pass out. If someone's got you in a chokehold, right? You don't tap out.
Right.
You're
gonna fight out there, right?
Yeah.
I look at
We can relate to that, George,
I see
can't
like
we?
I feel like the husband has. When I read that, I feel like the husband has 2 votes to the wife's 1. So I just feel like
Oh no.
it's putting him in control. I don't know. I feel like that. I don't know. I feel like that first paragraph needs to be deleted. I like that. I like that second part about the one flesh and stuff like that. What you hear at weddings.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that, but I don't even know why even include. I mean, I feel like that they even contradict each other. I feel like you guys are using that one flesh as a way to justify that, but I feel like they kind of contradict each other. Really, it definitely it sets standards there for wives and husbands right there.
Yeah, but see, what I think.
And then it comes down and talks about them being one flesh. Like, why even include that then? They're
But
contradicting each other.
here's
Let's talk
why.
about them being separate.
Because you're only looking at one half. But you have to put both halves together to be a whole. Just like you can't be married by yourself, right? You have to marry somebody else. Okay. So you have to put both sides of those together to get the whole argument.
I'm still wrestling with this fact that women submit, women or men, you should be nice. Like, that's what I'm getting out of it. Women, do what you're told. Men, you should be nice to your...
No.
It goes way beyond that. Keep reading. It goes way beyond.
What about
that.
what it says? As husbands, love your wives just like Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. He
Give
did.
your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which almost
Died
implies
for.
unattainable. I mean, that's a hard. That's a
Yeah,
high
it's
bar.
equal love. That's it's,
Yeah. Why even include that, though?
So let me ask: do you love your wife so much that you would allow yourself to be killed for her?
Yeah.
That's what it
That's
says
what-
you're supposed to
What
do.
it's talking about.
Okay, but it also says my wife's supposed to submit to me, and I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader of the household. And I don't want my wife to necessarily feel like she has to submit to me, and I don't want to be the spiritual.
So
Well, it's not like you have a-
should
I
submit
got
to
something
her.
for you, George.
I'm
Not
listening.
like you got an arm lock on her.
Let me say this. I got it married at 18. I was a father at 19. So, in fact, I was over in Europe when I was a father. So when I got back to the States, I loved being a dad, even though I was a young dad. I really did. So things that I did with my daughters, they're 3 years apart, long before the boys came. I had some friends in Ashtabula. We go out to his place, his farm, and we shoot guns. I wouldn't take my wife. She didn't want to go. I didn't take her. So me and the girls go hang out. Nothing personal. She just didn't want to hang out with us. My point was, when I come back home and my mother would hear this story, she'd be ready to snatch my head off. Well, how come she didn't go and you took those girls out there and you did that, and if there was a death in the family, if my kids wasn't in school yet, and my family comes out of Macon, Georgia, and I say, okay, well, hey, I'll take them down with me. My parents was trying to figure out, why was I taking them with me if my wife wasn't going? They couldn't get past that, man. They truly couldn't get past that. Because that generation, which is the World War II generation, they couldn't get past that, man. They're, boy, what is your problem?
Right? Yeah.
I'm literally, man. So I'm saying certain time frames, people can't visualize certain changes. That's true. I mean, they have the best of intentions, but I felt that each generation is supposed to outdo the previous one. So I wanted to expose my kids the best I could to every aspect. But it was 4 boys in our family, so 2 girls. They never cut grass. Hey, my daughters are cutting grass at 6 years old. Not because I'm being hard on them, but I wanted them to be well-rounded, you know. So there's certain things we don't look at society, and I really feel certain things that society don't want us to analyze because it creates a narrow-minded perspective. So nobody gets off the track. We're gonna just stay on. We're just gonna look straight ahead, you know. You mentioned something about your relatives of the past as far as blacks. Well, I had a conversation the other day, I went to a play, and they were talking about. We had a discussion prior to the play, and it was talking about the time frame of these black artists. So it's 1936. And it's in 1936, the Jesse Owens had won 4 gold medals in Europe, and Hitler didn't acknowledge him. You know, so the guy moves on to something else. So I raised my hand and said, "Yeah, he in the back there." And I said, "That's true. What happened there? But he came home to this country. Roosevelt didn't acknowledge him either. He got no telegram from the president. He got no handshake from the president. He had his awards or party at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and had to go through the back door. This is all documented stuff. This isn't something I'm making up. This is all documented stuff, you know. So how can you? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound like I'm in supporting Hitler, but how can you judge him when you've done the same thing, if not worse? Because to me, when you come back here, you're supposed to be able to have your guard down. But for the average, to me, and I'm not getting. I don't mean to get off subject, but as African Americans, you need to be aware of that stuff too. Don't sit back and want to debate with somebody, but you have to educate self too, you know. Mm-hmm. So things like that, you know, we just have to be well rounded in that, and it may have seemed getting off point, but it's all to make a point. So just getting back to the initial view is we have to. I don't know. I just feel we got to look at it from different angles sometimes, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that my people are from the Czech Republic, and that was never part of the slave. That was never part of the slave trade.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Get out of here! It's true. Historically, the Czech Republic and my family's brand new United States. They're never part of the slave trade.
Yeah, that's
ever.
actually kind of genius. I never thought that. Oh, and that's
It's true.
More
We
Slovak than I am
weren't.
Irish.
We weren't.
Actually, it's a strange thing because, like, you know, I've lived through my life, and I pretty much lived in like white neighborhoods and things like that. But I did have friends that lived in Slavic Village at the time. It was very Polish, but there was an element of African Americans that lived near that area there, and they had a public pool. And I remember I would go visit my friends in the summertime, and they'd say, "We go to the pool."
Harvard there.
Off Harvard, right? So we would go to the pool, and we were allowed to go right in because we were white. And it was so funny because outside the fence was all the black kids, and they weren't allowed in the pool. And so, and I didn't understand it. It's like, why? And I asked my friends, like, because I didn't know. I mean, I didn't realize this was going on, you know. But later in life, as I contemplate, it's like that was so bad.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and it said. So I said to my friends, like, how come they can't come in? And the comments that was said to me was like, well, because they leave a dirty ring around the pool.
Oh my god.
I mean, you know, it's like, and I thought, wow, I said, that's bad. So, you know, but it was this discrimination back then. And
You have to have division among the masses if you're going to keep everybody fighting among each other. It's essential.
Interesting point.
It's essential.
Interesting point.
Yeah.
and to this day, it's bothered me, you know. And I was a little kid back then, you know, and it was like, but you know, things have changed, you know, since then, you know, obviously, you know, but it's just that, you know, and I know we're in a much different culture than even when I was a kid, you know. I mean, it's just remarkably even for you. So what I later found out in life is when I get buddies like you, they're my friends, found out he had a life just like mine, you know, just in a different neighborhood. You know, his parents were like my parents. They whoop your hind end if you went wrong,
without a doubt.
you know, and it was just like us. And his parents worked hard, and just like mine did, and found out how did this happen? You know, how did this garbage go on? It's like we're the same, you know.
Yeah.
So as they say, he's a brother with another mother, you know. But that's kind of how we look at things, and then what it is our culture gets these words like submit, you know, and these come into in us as Americans, and you know, in our Western culture, we take these words and think, oh, that's like a bad thing because the culture clearly just destroys that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Can I say that this text actually does the opposite of what you're thinking? Like George is saying, well, it's a submit. This text actually does the opposite of what you're thinking, because in Greco-Roman society, this actually parlays into the next question. In this context, if you look at it, he starts with the wife, submit to your husband, all right? But in Greco-Roman society, hold on. This is 2,000 years ago.
Is that you, George?
In Greco-Roman society, that is what was supposed to happen. And so people are expecting him to say, wives, submit to your husband. What they're not expecting him to say is, make sure that you treat her like you treat yourself. That's the part that nobody is expecting him to say.
No.
Right.
So he starts with this, but then goes right into, yeah, guess what? She's the same as you. No one is expecting that. And he's actually flipping Greco-Roman culture on that in this, even within just this small context of the letter.
And technically, back in that day, in the Greco-Roman culture, if a woman even backtalked to her husband, he can kill her.
Yeah.
So you're saying this passage would have been read back then as more offensive to the males.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's interesting.
That parlays into 1 Timothy
If I were
2:12.
a skeptic, I would totally embrace that now.
Right. And that parlays into this next part, 1 Timothy 2:12, which was his next question. This statement may be read as two prohibitions. A woman cannot teach or exercise authority over a man. If so, Paul presents two independent but related commands. Alternatively, this statement can be read as a single prohibition, followed by an explanation. This interpretation, based partially on a particular reading of the Greek syntax and combination of specific verbs, suggests that Paul prohibits women from teaching men because it inverted the acceptable authority structure in Greco-Roman society. Either way, Paul's main concern was the church's ability to minister effectively without appearing to disregard cultural traditions, which would alienate the general population. So in other words, they are trying to teach people Christianity within their own culture. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take this message where it says, you know, the verse that you gave me was, you know, that I do not permit women to teach men. All right?
Got it.
Okay. Well, that was specifically because in Greco-Roman culture, that was not allowable. So in order to let the gospel become part of that culture, he had to abide by that.
So they had to
for
suppress
their
women
culture.
so they could pass their message along. Cool.
Well, it's either that or die, right? So
Well, what do you mean they were gonna die? Like I just feel like why would that even make its way into the Bible then? I don't get it.
once
With
again,
the context piece,
it's really easy to say when you're an American living where you can get cheese at convenient.
And potato chips.
And chip dip.
But if you're living in a society where it's like, well, I can be a nice, abiding Roman who abides by the rules of culture, or I can get cast out of the city, imprisoned, or worse. Okay?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
So
So
Remember,
why are we making
and
Jesus
this is
got
just
crucified? Why
this
why
is
are we making exceptions for
this
Roman
is
Greco
actually just
women?
before the Neronian persecution. So if you think about that in context, this is just before Nero took his throne, and Nero's the one that caused the biggest persecution of the Christian church. He would light Christians on fire just simply to light his gardens at night. This is just before that.
That's
Okay.
true. So there were competing cultures they had to fight against, the laws of the land around
Yes.
them.
So, but I feel
When-
like in the go ahead.
When Christ was brought before Caesar to be punished and executed, Caesar told him, "You have your own laws." The Jewish community and leaders at that time had control over the Jewish people and their own laws.
Yes.
That was the rub that the Jewish people wanted over their control over the Jewish people. They enforced their own Jewish laws on them.
Yes.
So a lot of these rules that Paul has, I feel like that's where the rub is.
That's true, but remember the Romans had taken away their right to anything beyond imprisonment. So even though they could say, hey, this guy is guilty of our Jewish laws, they were not allowed to act upon those laws without Jewish or without Roman consent.
Yeah, so that's the part, I guess, that's a little bit troubling for me is that, at some point you can say, oh, if I was Jewish leadership at the time and,
Caiaphas.
Yeah, Caiaphas. And, these people weren't acting according to my Jewish law that I want control over them. I could appeal to Greco-Roman law
Yes.
and say, hey, all right, well, I'm going to impose these laws on you now. That's not good.
Well, it's definitely not good because the crucifixion of Christ was, if you look at it, it was.
What I'm saying is, for the leadership, it's not good because you can toggle back and forth. It's for me, that's the essence of bureaucracy and politicalness.
Exactly.
If you're not going to abide by these rules, I can get you here. I mean, that's the whole essence of speaking how lawyers speak.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to skin a cat. And so for me, the part that's troubling with me with Paul and all of these laws is because he kind of has the final word in Christianity because
only as far as he's allowed to by the culture that he is ministering with.
right, yeah, it feels like he has the final word, right? And so I don't understand. So a lot of these things that I know you have trouble with, George, some of it I wrestle with in regards to women and all of that, and I only take it I kind of take it with a grain of salt because if someone just handed me a New Testament with the teachings of Christ, I feel like I wouldn't have gotten so confused along the way. And there's just a lot of stuff I feel like I wouldn't have to shed
Like a Gideon
in
Bible.
my growth. Just the New Testament.
Yeah, the Gideon
Yeah.
Bible.
The Gideon Bible. Whatever Bible.
King.
Yeah.
Not King James.
But-
King James. It's very
but-
confusing.
But with Paul kind of having the last word on it,
That is a Gideon.
it's interesting because then you wonder, like, well, wait a minute, man, this guy, I mean, he persecuted Christians, killed them, killed Christians, any believers of Christ were killed, and then he had his moment where he converted from night to day. So, and then all of a sudden, we're supposed to take him at his word. That bugs me. Join us for part 3 on Skeptics Corner.